simultaneous English, Spanish, Haitian, Creole interpretation, and you'll be able to access interpretation after these instructions.
Ok, je dis, on a interprété simultanément en créole, en espagnol, avec en anglais, bien sûr. Donc, les nous finissons par instruction, ou pas le ouais. Tout à l'heure, nous parlons comment nous pour nous faire instruction pour fonction interprétation.
Si está usando una computadora, haz clic en el icono de globo al pie de su pantalla con la palabra interpretación. Selecciona el canal de su lenguaje preferido, inglés o español. If you're using a computer, click on the globe icon at the bottom of your screen with the word interpretation. Select the channel with the language of your choice, English or Spanish.
Soit utiliser un computer ou un ordinateur ou un globe blanc, ou choisir langue qu'on va utiliser. Si c'est créole ou un Haitian créole, ou cliquer Haitian créole.
Para teléfono inteligente o tableta, haz clic en los 3 puntos etiquetados más para hacer su selección. For smartphone or tablet, click on the 3 dots labeled more to make your selection.
Pour smartphone ou bien pour tablette, pour téléphone mobile, ou pas cliquer sur 3 petits points, côté qui marqué more, ou cliquer sur 3 petits points, après marqué done.
No se olvide escoger su canal de lenguaje preferido. Si tiene cualquier problema escuchándonos a nosotros o con la tecnología, por favor envíe un mensaje al chat. Don't forget to click on your language of choice. If you have any problem hearing us or with the technology, please send us a message in the chat.
Pas oublier, choisir langue qu'on va utiliser. Si vous avez un problème de technologie avec technique là, envoyez un chat bon, s'il vous plaît.
Gracias por su compromiso en crear un espacio multilingüe. Thank you for your commitment to creating a multilingual space.
Merci pour être nous dédiés pour nous utiliser un espace en multilingue.
Thank you so much, Chloe and Nikita, for that explanation. We are going to go.
No estoy, el audio no lo estoy escuchando, no sé, solo los estoy viendo. No sé qué está pasando con mi teléfono.
No sé, pero nosotros sí lo escuchamos, Santos. Entonces, por favor, pónganse en mute si puede. So we're going to go ahead and start the event. As y'all can tell, we're having some dealing with some technical difficulties, but we're going to go ahead and activate the interpretation. You know, if folks can go ahead and introduce themselves in the chat, we would appreciate it just to know who is here joining us. And again, my name is Mijente Gonzalez. I'm a senior campaign organizer with Mijente. And really, we want to thank all of you for joining us today for this Eyes on ICE Truth and Accountability Forum. You know, since March 1st, Mijente, together with the We Are Home campaign and partner grassroots organizations across the country, have been organizing truth and accountability forums to lift up the stories, demands, and organizing of people who have had to confront this country's detention and deportation systems. On May 3rd, we're going to have our closing forum, where we have formally invited DHS Secretary Ale Mayorkas to attend. Later in the program, we're going to be hoping that many of you can help take action to make this a reality. Today's forum has been organized by Mijente, Haitian Bridge Alliance, UndocuBlack Network, National Immigrant Justice Center, Families Belong Together, and Human Rights First. We're really thankful for all of our partners for this collaboration and for all of their ongoing work on an incredibly important and urgent matter, which we're going to be addressing today, which is deportations and expulsions under the Biden administration. We know that President Biden has inherited a Department of Homeland Security that has deported millions and continues to surveil, deport people throughout the US and at the border. During the last 4 years of the Trump administration, ICE and CBP, Custom and Borders Patrol, became even more violent, cruel, and less accountable. And we know that addressing and reversing these harms is going to be a huge task. You know, since taking office, President Biden has taken positive steps to right some of the wrongs under Trump. When on his first day of office, he announced a moratorium on deportations. He's also ended MPP, or the Remain in Mexico policy. And he is finally allowing unaccompanied children to enter and seek refuge in the US. But unfortunately, too many of Trump's harmful and inhumane policies remain in place. And ICE's disappointing implementation of President Biden's executive orders and the continued expulsions at the border under Title 42, which folks will explain more about in a few moments, have resulted in approximately 127,457 deportations or expulsions. And more than 14,000 people are still in detention right now. This is unnecessary. It's unhumane. And today we're going to hear from some of the people who have been directly impacted by this deportation and detention system. President Biden has the power to actually stop deportations and to rein in ICE and CBP. We know that these agencies continue to arrest, detain, and deport members in our community with impunity. And today we're here to demand action. You know, Trump destroyed the ability for folks to ask for asylum at the border. But what we don't want is for President Biden to simply rebuild a system that's based on detentions and deportations. Now is the time for us to reimagine what our immigration system can look like so that it's actually just and that it reflects our values. We don't want it to continue to actually reinforce the racism in the US policing system and incarceration systems. Right now is when we have to invest in health and well-being of communities and not actually fall for the far right talking points that Republicans have embraced that are actually demanding investment in surveillance, cages, and dehumanizing practices like deportation. So first part of things that you can do to take action is we want to encourage everyone to sign the petition to President Biden and Mayorkas, urging them to take action on executive actions that can stop detentions and deportations, and tell them that they actually should come to this forum on May 3rd so that they can talk directly to organizers and activists that have been working on the Eyes on ICE forums. So we're gonna put that in the chat. I hope that you sign it so that we can continue to put more pressure. But for now, we're gonna get started with the agenda. We've talked a lot about Title 42. People might have heard about it in the news, know that it's kind of responsible for all of the deportation and expulsions that are happening at the border. But what is it? What does it mean? Today, we're gonna have two amazing organizers and activists talk to us about what it means, how it works, and what the implications are, and what the disproportionate impact has been on Black migrants. So with that, I will pass it over to Garlene Joseph, the Executive Director of Haitian Bridge Alliance, and after her will be Hadi Gassama from UndocuBlack Network. Garlene, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you so much, Jacinta. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Again, on behalf of Haitian Bridge Alliance, UndocuBlack, Mijente, Families Belong Together, Human Rights First, and all of our partners, thank you for joining us. My name is Garlene Joseph. I am co-founder and executive director of the Haitian Bridge Alliance. A brief introduction: in the Haitian Bridge Alliance provide humanitarian assistance, direct services, including legal, bond, also organizing and advocacy on behalf of Black immigrants at the US-Mexico borderland and in country. As you heard from Jacinta, is this big border issues we hear every day, the border crisis and the rumors and all of this happening at the border. What does it look like? Is it something that just started the last couple of months? No. Those of us who have been on the ground, who have been pushing, we know the reality. We know that people have been waiting at the US-Mexico border, in the case of Black immigrants, at least 1.5 to 4 years. And we will talk about deportation, expulsion under Title 42, how we see the Biden-Harris administration continues to use the cruel, evil, draconian system that was implemented and enacted by President Trump. How we see the current administration continues to use Title 42 as a trap. I invite you also to take a look at The Invisible Wall, a report on Title 42. We will be posting it on here for you to see. That was released a couple of days ago. We also will invite you to take a look at The Journey of Hope, that tells the stories of Black women, specifically from Haiti, who got stuck in Tapachula at the Guatemala-Mexico border. To better understand the journey that these people make, the reason why, the root causes, how people end up where they are. And we are asking President Biden, the administration, Vice President Kamala Harris, Secretary Mayorkas, Secretary Blinken, to welcome people with dignity. So as we move forward and look into those specific issues, and we look into Black immigrants at the US-Mexico border. And before we even get into the US-Mexico border, I want to bring to your mind that people are traveling in these Black bodies of theirs, getting stuck at over 10 to 11 borders. In the case of Haitians, the majority of the people we find at the borders today are survivors of the earthquake that killed over 250,000 people that day, leaving close to 2 million people in complete despair, a country in shambles, no infrastructure, no school, no way of life. Keep in mind that these people have been on a journey in search for life for the past 10 years. They made their way to Brazil, where they found it impossible for them to continue to survive. They made their way to Chile. Now they are experiencing cruel anti-Black racism. They made their way 30, 40 years ago to Venezuela due to political unrest, now having to flee Venezuela again because of what's happening there. Now, finally make their way to the US-Mexico border. And one other thing I need to bring to your attention, as we look into this deportation and expulsion, realizing that the majority of those children that we are allowing our country, our administration, to continue to deport, those children were born at the border. Those children were born in Chile, in Venezuela, in Brazil, while their parents fled home in search for home. So when we are hearing deportations to Haiti, for example, yes, the mother and the father got deported, but the children are being sent to Haiti, not deported. They were never there. And you will hear also the story of another strong man who will share his personal story with us today. So we are going to continue to dig deeper into how anti-Black racism play into what we are seeing today. And we are going to ask President Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, and the entire administration to rescind Title 42, to stop deportation, to stop expulsions of the most vulnerable people. Understanding that using Title 42 as a health code to completely dismantle the asylum process is unacceptable. It is cruel, borderline criminal for the United States to continue to deport and expel people to Haiti. It is criminal for the Haitian government to agree to accept to receive people into the country while the country is literally on fire. And an example I shared before is, imagine a house burning, full flame. Instead of bringing safety and protection, we are dropping 2-month-old babies, pregnant women, 16-year-old boys, 13-year-old girls, 8-year-old children into the burning house. Understanding that a lot of people might see the hashtag Free Haiti, understanding what that means. And we have shared before, that means free Haiti from internal violence and from external violence. And the deportations and expulsions under Title 42 is one of the external violence that is being forced on Haiti right now. So we are asking, we are calling on the community, we are calling on our allies, co-conspirators, friends of Haiti, friends of the world, to demand that President Biden and the administration rescind and stop Title 42 and stop the deportations and stop the expulsions. And we are demanding, as we are seeing what's happening right now, that the President Biden immediately redesignate, have new designation for TPS for Haiti immediately. We are grateful that our brothers and sisters from Venezuela, from Burma, from Syria have already received it. Now it's time for the first Black country to receive redesignation of TPS for Haiti. And so we continue to make that call, and we will continue to push for that idea that Title 42 cannot continue as is. Title 42 needs to be rescinded. The immigration system needs to be better. And we will continue to work with one another. We will continue to push and serve, to provide protection, to provide services, to welcome people with dignity. Jacinta, I'm looking at the time. I could share more, but I don't want to go over time.
Thank you so much, Garlene. I think this is a good moment to pass it over to Hattie to kind of talk to us a little bit more about the implications of all of this. But thank you so much for that explanation, for your amazing work. It's been so important and crucial at actually making sure that people know what's happening at the border. So thank you so much. Hattie?
Sure. It's always rough to speak after Gerline. Such powerful words and echoing all of her sentiment. President Biden ran on a platform of improving the lives of Black people in the United States through equitable and progressive policies. But it seems that, there was maybe a mishap or something where he did not realize that Black immigrants are also Black people in the United States, and that his promises to improve the lives of Black people in the US extends to the lives of Black immigrants. There seems to be a gap between that campaign promise and particularly the actions of ICE and CBP under his control. Biden was inaugurated on January 20th, and by January 28th, there was already a deportation flight to Jamaica, just 8 days after his inauguration. Since that first flight, we've seen flights slated to Angola, Cameroon, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Haiti. And in particular, in the case of Haiti, almost 24 deportation flights carrying more than 1,300 pregnant women, newborn babies, and other vulnerable populations have left the US. Biden deported Black people almost every single day during Black History Month. Biden deported Black women almost every single day of Women's History Month. And he continues to deport people who are survivors of domestic violence as well as sexual assault. He's made a lot of promises to our communities. People like myself who believe those promises made sure to vote for him in hopes of a better situation for my Black brothers and sisters. Yet the anti-Black policies continue, just as Gerline mentioned, with the horrific nature of Title 42, which denies people their international human rights right to be able to apply for asylum. They are denied, effectively creating a closed border, something Biden ran upon saying that, he wouldn't do such a thing. When we talk about the rights of children, and Biden talks about, wanting to have a humane immigration system, what about the Black babies? What about the 1-month-old babies, the children 8 years old who will be old enough to remember and have to live with the trauma of deportation? Do they not count? Are they not considered when, you know, his policies are being implemented and discussed? Even when it comes to the no-brainer policy, such as a redesignation of TPS for Haiti, a country that is currently on literal and figurative fire, where for all intensive purposes, now more than ever before, I would say, qualifies perfectly so for temporary protected status redesignation. The administration still continues to drag its feet. We, I think, as Black immigrants have been saying this for far too long. Immigration is a Black issue. And when you run on a platform of improving the immigration system, as well as the lives of Black immigrants, you must understand that those two things are inherently intertwined. As a community, we are constantly targeted and criminalized. So many members of our community find themselves in the throes of the immigration system as a result of the criminal justice system. Biden's interim enforcement memos and policies have affected our community in a great way, where, you know, the people who are designated to be priority people, folks who fall under the the aggravated felony rules, are oftentimes Black people who've been, again, live in over police communities and are targeted and end up in immigration proceedings as a result. Any which way you look at it, whether it's the Biden administration or others, the impact of the immigration system on the Black community has time and time again been disproportionate and devastating. So we are not only imploring this administration to keep its promise to Black people, to keep its promise to the Haitian community by redesignating TPS for Haiti, but really to keep that campaign promise of making sure that you do make life better for Black folks, and really understanding that that includes Black immigrants. And in order to do this, you cannot continue to deport us. You cannot continue to detain us. You cannot continue to separate us from our loved ones. And I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Hattie. That was such an important reminder and overview of all of the ways, right, that the deportation policies and expulsion policies that are happening right now have such a racist use, right? And we have to be able to recognize that and say that out loud to be able to bring accountability from ICE and DHS for what their practices are. We're going to move ahead to the agenda because we have so many powerful speakers, right? I really feel bad because anybody who's on this call could go on for at least an hour or two to really actually explain everything that's happening. But I wanted to bring us now to Ziad, who's actually at the border, who's actually not being allowed into the US, to be able to share with us a little bit about what the situation is there and what your personal story is. Ziad, can you hear us?
Yeah, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect, loud and clear, thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Before I start my speech, I just wanna thank Sister Garling. She has been an inspiration for us, for the Black people and our representation. She's a tireless human being, and I'm really thanking you in the name of all the Black migrants, independent of which continent or country. You are our angel. Thank you very much. I am a migrant from East Africa, and I left home because of persecutions and torture caused by my political views and ethnicity. I came to Mexico a year and a month ago. When I came, I got registered in the waiting list. And after a month, the border closed because of the pandemic. Since then, I have been here with hundreds of Black migrants and Central and Latin American migrants. Life has been tough. We have tried to survive under the pandemic, and also the pandemic called racism. Being migrant is tough, and being a Black migrant is even worse. We are the source of income for Mexican police. Whenever they stop you for no reason, you should pay 500 pesos, which is around $20–25. Otherwise, you go to prison for no reason or get deported. We survived this, and out of desperation, in September, I crossed between borders to seek asylum with a group of African migrants, and we were expelled immediately due to Title 42. We came back, we tried to survive. And since February, I have been volunteering and working with Haitian Bridge Alliance, thanks to Sister Garlin. We work for all the migrants, human beings who are sleeping in the middle of nowhere under the small tents in this weather, children. I am a migrant. When I go there, they see me as a human being who can help them, just because I try to share the bitter truth of what we are waiting for. And I am the source of information for Black migrants, especially the Haitian brothers and sisters. For different bodies or individuals, they see us differently. So for some, we are migrants. For some, we are people who are dying for American dream. That is not the truth. We are human beings. We are human beings who are fleeing violence, torture, death threats. My message to the President of the United States and the government of the US is that, Mr. President, the people who are sleeping at Chaparral, the people who are in Chaparral now, right now, as I'm speaking, under the sun of 35 degrees, are human beings. There are women, single mothers, widows, children who saw their fathers killed or their mothers raped. There are women with various children, and there are Black women, African women, Haitian women, who came all the way through Chile, Panama, Mexico, all the way through Latin America, who suffered racism, who have been raped several times on their way to this place in the jungles of Panama, but who cannot speak because that is what the sexist society told them, not to speak out their pains. Those people are here suffering under racism. Those ladies are suffering racism here after coming through all this way. Black men, African and Haitian men are more discriminated here in Mexico, sometimes even by migrants who are victims of violence, but who come from the Latin American racist system, who told them that a Black man cannot stand on the line with them to seek humanitarian aid. I'm speaking in the name of all those migrants, regardless of their countries and skin color. We are not people who just backed their backs and have in their minds the US dollars. We are people who are sacrificing everything that we have to seek asylum in the country we think that we have safety. In the name of those migrants, I'm begging you to end the Title 42 and help us seek asylum legally and in a safe way. I want to speak for my Haitian brothers and sisters who I every day see at Chaparral and who look at me in the face every day and think that I'm bringing them a better information. Deporting Haitian children, women, and men to Haiti this time in these conditions is the most cruel thing that can be done to a human being. And give TPS to our Haitian brothers and sisters. Let us in and seek asylum. It is one of the most basic human rights in the US Constitution and also in the United Nations. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ziad, for sharing all of that. You know, I'm just getting all of the text messages from people who are listening to your story and talking about how moving it is to hear you speak. I know that people have known about your powerful organizing and support for fellow migrants across the country. So know that your work is known and recognized. Thank you for continuing that fight and for letting people know what's actually happening. There's so much disinformation happening right now about what's happening at the border, and hearing you speak really kind of paints a picture for people. So thank you so much for doing this. You know, Title 42 hasn't only been used at the border, right? This is what many of us have been talking about, is the explosions at the border. But Title 42 has also been used as an excuse to conduct raids very much within the interior of the United States. So it is also a pleasure to introduce all of you to Sandra Solis, an organizer with Puente Human Rights Movement in Phoenix, Arizona. We'll talk about how Title 42 is being used by ICE and CBP there to go into neighborhoods to terrorize communities. Sandra?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Jacinta. I'm happy to be here, but not under these circumstances and what we're seeing. These really egregious human rights violations and racism that is existing. For us, you know, I will be sharing a little bit of what we've been able to see as far as the misuse of Title 42. It's something that we heard of once COVID-19 hit our communities. However, it was something that we never foresaw happening in the US interior. And unfortunately, Phoenix has been, you know, a witness to the use of Title 42, both under two different administrations. We saw it used in September of 2020 under the Trump administration, and we saw it most recently used on January 29th under the Biden administration, just 1 week after his inauguration, just 1 week after the executive order saying that there would be a moratorium on the deportations. And I'm just going to recount what we experienced in January 29th. On the night, we received a phone call through our organization's crisis line, and we received a call about a raid in South Phoenix because there were multiple police vehicles, there were multiple buses, everything that would look like a raid. And two of our staff organizers arrived to the scene to then see DHS, Department of Homeland Security, ICE, Phoenix Police Department, the DEA, and two other local officials present, which was more than 5 different law enforcement officials and departments there. You know, there was 2 large unmarked vans waiting, and all we saw was lights. And really what this was, you know, what the organizers had reported was this was a case of human trafficking. There were a family member called 911 because their loved one was stuck in the home, and the smugglers were essentially just holding these individuals hostage. And you know, when they called 911, Phoenix Police Department immediately called ICE, and ICE immediately gave everybody Title 42 charge. Within this house, there was one woman particularly who came to the border seeking medical asylum. She was diagnosed in her home country with terminal cancer. She had this evidence, yet the only way that she was able to migrate was, you know, through this path, and Phoenix Police Department was supposed to act in, you know, giving the different reports, you know, and documenting this a totally different way, and yet they used the Title 42 use and just put everyone through the immigration proceedings. And so for us, it was very difficult, one, to respond to this raid, because what Title 42 is doing, it's skipping the A number process. A lot of the individuals who normally we would be responding to if this was a regular raid, you know, they weren't given an A number, which meant that they weren't necessarily going in through the immigration system. You know, they weren't trackable. And in a sense, this is kind of cutting off the blueprint and that tactic that we normally use to fight the deportations case by case. So, you know, with this raid and the other raid that we saw with the Trump administration, we see two clear things: that this border policy is being misused in the interior. And I think what Arizona has the habit of what we see is that everything is kind of tested in Arizona. And so for us, you know, we've been doing a lot of work around really exposing what Title 42 is, but we've also been doing a lot of work to advocate for these individuals, because Title 42 to us isn't an excuse for ICE to continue to go rogue. To us, Title 42 is not a reason for individuals who already get the short end of the stick in the deportation systems with prosecutorial discretion. You know, all of these different factors are being removed. And so we're seeing case by case that within this 100 days, you know, this administration is being very strategic in what they're doing, and very dangerous in keeping Title 42 intact.
Thank you so much, Samda, for sharing that. And I think it's just really important for people to know this, to be reminded, right? And for folks that might have joined a little bit late and are asking themselves, what is Title 42? We know that we were able to explain a little bit about it at the beginning, but basically it's a Center for Disease Control, for CDC's guidelines around COVID that were manipulated by President Trump to justify a deportation policy, not allowing people to enter or to be able to be removed from the country extremely quickly without any sort of rights or process. So just to kind of wrap up this section, precisely because we know that there's this fake public health justification for these expulsions, we're gonna ask Dr. Michelle Heiser from Physicians for Human Rights to just explain to us a little bit of like what I would call the bogus science behind this, and why it's so important from a public health perspective for Title 42 to stop being implemented in this way. Dr. Michelle?
Yes, thank you, Jacinta. So as a physician, I've done medical legal evaluations of some of the people who've been expelled to their countries where they've indeed faced torture, violence, persecution. It's also very upsetting as a public health expert, as you noted, that to see that these spurious public health arguments that were made to justify a policy that was motivated by anti-immigrant, not public health aims, is in fact continuing. But we now know that there never was a public health rationale for the Title 42 ban. The Title 42 ban singles out people seeking asylum. It does not, just so people understand, many other groups are continuing regularly to cross the US border: truckers, students, business people. Only those who are migrating, who are seeking asylum, have been and are being prevented from entering into the US. We now know also that CDC medical experts strongly objected to Title 42 when it was first implemented, and their expertise was overridden for ideological aims. There's no evidence that people who are migrating are at increased risk of contracting contracted COVID-19, no more than all the many, many other thousands of people who are entering. In fact, now that some tests are being done, test positivity for migrants in one high volume port of entry was much, much less than the population at large. It also is not true that processing asylum seekers would lead to overcrowding and thus transmission of COVID-19 in the processing centers and in detention. In fact, there's no reason that they should need to be in any of these congregate settings. It's so important. Again, and many of us were also heartened that the Biden administration was going to respect science, was going to respect public health. It's so important that the policies actually be grounded in evidence and human rights, not in xenophobia and xenophobia and pseudoscience. Just a couple of other quick things, because I know time is short and we want to hear the voices of others who are actually experiencing this. I will say that we at PHR, along with public health experts throughout the country, have developed detailed public health recommendations on safe, humane border processing that we've publicly disseminated. We can make them available to you to share. We've sent them to the new head of the CDC and the Secretary of HHS. Arriving migrants can be COVID-19 screened and tested. They can be processed and released to stay with family members and close friends in the United States. More than 90% of the population seeking to migrate and to come to the US do have these connections. Those without family or friends can be sent to quarantine in vacant hotels and shelters. This is being done for residents throughout the US and can also be done. Releasing migrants, people who are migrating and seeking asylum into the community does not circumvent their legal cases. Again, there's good evidence that 97% of asylum seekers, people seeking asylum, do reliably show up for their hearings. So quickly in conclusion, the CDC border directive is unscientific. It's not based on public health and has created innumerable health harms. We heard from Zayad about what he has experienced, and from Gorleen and others about others have experienced. I think we're going to hear some more. So again, we really must all work together to ensure that Title 14 ends immediately. So thank you so much, and I'll stop now.
Thank you so much, Doctor. And that's just a very good summary, right, of all of the things that President Biden and Secretary Mayorkas could do to stop these deportations. They could stop Title 42. They could redesignate TPS, particularly for Haiti, so that not only people who have already been covered for TPS, but actually tens of thousands of people more could actually be also protected. And they could actually allow people to enter and ask for asylum without being detained. These are things, concrete actions that President Biden could do starting tomorrow, right? But that's why we're going to require more pressure, more energy, more organizing to be able to get that to happen. So we're very thankful for all of the folks that are joining us today, but we don't just want you to listen to these stories. We also want you to take action. So I'm going to quickly pass it over to my comrade Isa to just give us some quick instructions of things you can do right now in less than a minute to be able to help us, push President Biden, push Secretary Mayorkas to do what's right, and to be able to enforce these demands that we're placing on them. Isa?
Hi, everyone. I'm Isa Noyola. And now is the moment to actually not just listen to the stories, but to take action like Jacinta shared. We know that President Biden ran on a platform to really put in question the lack of morality around Trump's immigration policies that he set in place at the border. And so now is the time for Biden to take action and to listen, and for all of his administration to take the time to center communities that have been impacted. And we have a call to action. We've put out a letter inviting Secretary Mayorkas to the forum to actually listen. because that's the least that the Department of Homeland Security can do to really take in the gravity of these stories and the implications of human rights abuses and torture. So if you go to @ConMijente, ConMijente on Twitter, you can retweet this demand. So we're asking folks to go to Twitter, visit our Twitter page and retweet the demand for Secretary Mayorkas to attend this forum. We need to hold the Department of Homeland Security accountable. They need to listen. They need to listen. That is the clear instruction in this moment, to listen to communities that are impacted, and for him to attend. So if you can retweet Secretary Mayorkas, and then also copy and paste on your own Twitter so that he sees that various folks, in addition to Mijente, are also concerned. And then there should be a link in the chats available as well, which will populate and lead you to retweet the tweet. So please do so. Now is the time to take action. Mayorkas and Department of Homeland Security are paying attention. They are seeing all of these messages unfold, and they are invited to join this forum, the last forum to culminate this series. And so thank you for everyone taking the time really quickly to retweet and to also add to your voices, and let Secretary Mayorkas know that what to do right now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Isa, and thanks to everyone in the chat that is already saying that they are taking action, that they are tweeting, that they are telling other people to do the same. We know that Secretary Mayorkas cares about being tagged on Twitter, and so this is the time to take action, to amplify. You can follow the link, you can retweet. There's just so many things that you can do. But we know that it hasn't just been Title 42 that has led to so many deportations under President Biden. On his first day in power, President Biden announced that he had an executive order with a moratorium on deportations. But a few weeks later, Secretary Mayorkas issued a memo, an enforcement memo to all of his ICE agents around how to implement that. And that is where the policy got really, really bad. And that's where we started to see policies around criminalization start to pop up that would use certain justifications around contact with the policing and legal system in the US as an excuse to deport people. And so right now we're going to listen to the story of someone who was deported under President Biden, who was put on a plane, who was separated from his community. And so it is my honor, it is a great pleasure to be able to introduce all of you to Paul Pireles, who is calling us in from Haiti. Paul, can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Can you hear me?
I can. Paul, thank you so much for doing this and being here to talk to us about your story. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, just for folks to get to know you a little bit?
Not a problem. Thank you for having me on the platform. I arrived in New York when I was 5 years old. I'm a son, a brother. I'm a sister to somebody, an uncle, a cousin, a godparent to 2 kids, and I'm also a caregiver and friend to many. I'm a financial consultant in New York. I was a financial consultant in New York for 12 years. I like sports. I enjoy basketball, baseball, football, and I also like to barbecue. I'm calling in from Haiti, where I was deported as of February 2nd of this year.
You sound like a real New Yorker, Paul. But tell us a little bit, how did you end up in Haiti? What happened with your deportation? How is it that you're calling us from there?
I've been going to ICE check-ins since 2006, which is pretty much routine for me at the time. I would present myself and they would give me another date to come again. All they would pretty much tell me to do is just not get myself in any trouble, and here's another date. But on January 2021, I went to what I believed would be a typical routine check-in, and that turned my life upside down. I was told I was being deported to Haiti, a country which I've never been to, a country which I'm not a citizen of. I was arrested and sent to a detention center. I asked them over and over again for a travel document, but they would never, provide me with a straight answer. So over the course of 10 days, I was driven to multiple state lines, and I eventually arrived in Louisiana, which is a place that's far away from my family, my attorneys, or anybody that could be of any possible help. Yeah, so every opportunity that I had, I would tell ICE that they could not deport me because I'm not from the country, I'm not a citizen of that country, and which again, I've never been there. I demanded to see a travel document, which they claimed they had. They refused to show me one. So once, Joe Biden took office, I thought I'd be released, but that never happened. So one day, I'm woken up at midnight and I'm told that I'm going home. I didn't know what that meant, if home meant going back to New York or if they were trying to, remove me to Haiti. So I was threatened and I was intimidated and told that I'll be forced into a plane. So against my own will, I was put into an old white van with no ventilation. Inside of this van, it was dark, and I was in this van for over 5 hours, chained, shackled, and cuffed to be deported overseas to a place I've never been in my life. So once I landed in Haiti, I was shocked. I felt like it was a funeral or a wake. I heard people crying, yelling, screaming, but no one died. Just people's hopes, and just my hopes of ever seeing like my family or friends or loved ones again.
I am so sorry that you have had to go through that, Paul, and I can only imagine how scary and intimidating and devastating this must be. We've been hearing from Secretary Mayorkas and others, they've issued memos, they've said this publicly, that they have policies that anyone who has had contact with the criminal legal system, with policing, who might have an aggravated felony, for example, what they call an aggravated felony, or any contact with gangs, that should justify their deportation. Based off of your experience and your story, what do you think about that policy?
I think that policy is wrong. When I was 23 years old, I made a mistake. I confronted that mistake. I did my time, and I made it right. I went back, to being a regular New Yorker, and I don't think it makes sense that when I'm 40 years old for me to be taken back into custody and punished for something that I did when I was 23 years old. Deporting me didn't do anything, to keep anyone safe. I was safely part of the community for approximately 15 years, and all it did was just take me away from, my family, my friends, my loved ones. I think it's racist, and I think it's just wrong.
I couldn't agree with you more, Paul. These policies they make certain justifications, but just like you're saying, they're not making us safer. They're actually just separating families and really a devastation in terms of an injustice to everyone. And thank you for speaking so openly and bravely about that. This is something that we have to continue to push back against, right? Because the criminalization of Black and Brown people is really what this administration is trying to base their deportation policies on. So really thank you for your bravery and for speaking up in this way. You mentioned also in your story that, you were on the flight and that you heard all of the cries, that you were on that plane with so many other people. As Hattie and Gerline were talking about, since February 1st, there's been at least 25 deportation flights to Haiti. Can you tell us a little bit more about who are the folks that were on that plane with you and what their stories were?
I've seen cuffed detainees. I've seen fathers. I've seen pregnant women, children. Infants. Just seeing a bunch of kids and women crying on a plane like that. It's awful, and that it's wrong. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be like this.
I could not agree with you more, Paul. I think folks are asking, it's very clear that your deportation happened under President Biden, right? That he could have stopped your deportation and the deportation of all of those people that were on that plane with you. Do you have a message for his administration? Do you have a message for Secretary Mayorkas and other people who have the power to stop these things?
Well, Joe Biden, President Biden made a promise to stop deportations. He made a promise to stop family separation. He also made a promise to shut down these detention centers. I think he should just, I think he should keep his promise. He should uphold his promise because these people that are in these detention centers, they call them detention centers under the guise that it's a detention center, but it really it's a jail. There's no difference. People are still caged behind a wall, or they're locked up behind bars. What the other administration, what Trump did, that was very divisive and that was separating families. He was making multiple executive orders. I think Biden could make things right and uses his executive power to do the same thing. To bring families together. He made a promise to the American public, and I think he should execute his power and allow these people to stop being deported and bring these families back together. And that's something that he could do like today or tomorrow.
Thank you so much, Paul. Really, really thankful and grateful for you being able to share your experience with us today. Again, what happened to you is a tremendous injustice. And please let us know, let everyone who's sending you messages in the chat of love and support, how to continue to support your fight. Not only can President Biden stop deportations, not only can they stop and close down these detention centers, but they can also bring back people that were unjustly deported. And so it's important for all of us to just remember that the fight doesn't stop here, that we have to continue to be able to raise awareness, to put pressure, to build organizing infrastructure, to be able to bring people back and reunite families, because it's not just what happened under Trump at the border, it's actually what continues to happen every day. So again, Paul, thank you so much for your bravery, for your organizing. And yeah, please continue to be in touch so that we can continue to support you in your fight.
Thank you, Jacinta. I appreciate you having me on your platform, and continue the good work. A lot of people are counting on you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I think it's been really important for us to be able to, in all of these truth and accountability forums, not only share the voices of folks that are in the US, right, but also folks who have been deported or who have been expelled, but also including the voices of people who are still locked up, who are still in detention centers, in prisons, in jails. And so I'm going to pass the mic over to Naina Gupta from NIJC to introduce a video of one of their members and clients, Robert Panton, who is currently detained in Boone County Jail. So Naina, pass it over to you.
Thank you, Jacinta. Hi, everyone. I'm proud and honored to introduce to you today by video a client of the National Immigrant Justice Center where I work, Robert Panton. His words, which you will hear in a moment, straight from the detention center where he sits, speak for themselves. He spent 30 years, Robert, in prison for a non-violent conviction that he received in the criminal legal system. After serving 3 decades in prison, a judge granted him compassionate release, commending him for his work and all of the programs he participated in inside. But on the day of his release, ICE was waiting outside to pick him up. And now, even though he is older and suffers from several medical conditions and has served 3 decades of his debt to society, he sits inside immigration jail. At NIJC, since Biden's election, we have made multiple efforts to get Robert released. Under Biden's latest priorities for immigration, Robert should not even be in detention, but he still is, even with help from 2 members of Congress who have made direct calls to ICE. The agency under the Biden administration refuses to release him. Please join me as we listen to his words by recording.
City, California, and I was there until I got deported. So I grew up over there since I was like 13 years old. Primero que nada, que no pierdan las esperanzas, ¿verdad? Porque gracias a organizaciones como ustedes hay esperanzas. Pero lo que a mí me gustaría contarles es un poquito acerca de mi experiencia. Yo tenía el programa de DACA, ¿verdad? Y
Stop sharing.
Sorry, y'all. Is it Robert or Angel?
Robert.
We could hear the audio, but we could not see the video playing. Now we can see it. Thank you.
My name is Robert Stanville Panton. I was born in Jamaica. My family came to the United States when I was 4 years old. The United States and Harlem, New York, have always been my home. I wish I could speak to you in person today, but I am trapped in immigration detention, waiting in fear, separated from my family. This shouldn't be the case. Last August, I was granted a compassionate release after spending nearly 30 years in federal criminal custody for a non-violent drug conviction. The same day of my release, Immigration and Customs Enforcement took me into custody. During the worst pandemic in our history, and with pre-existing medical conditions for respiratory issues, I have been detained by ICE for over 6 months. This is a nation of second chances. It's time for mine 30 years in prison, and my efforts to improve my life while behind bars cleared my debt to society. When my petition for release was granted by a federal judge, I remember thinking, finally, justice delayed. Only instead of being free, ICE picked me up from the criminal correctional facility to take me to an immigration detention center. I was devastated. I hoped ICE would hold me for a bit and then let me go to my family. But 6 months later, I'm still here. The biggest pain is people waiting for me. My daughter, son, and sisters. Every day ICE punishes not just me, but my family by keeping us separated. While I wait for my immigration court hearing, I remain in fear of catching contracted COVID-19 due to staff's failure to adhere to COVID-19 procedures as recommended by the CDC. I thought conditions were bad in federal prison. They are so much worse in immigration detention. Our legal system has something called double jeopardy, where you can't be punished twice for the same crime. Because I am an immigrant, I'm being punished again and again. Our current laws continue to punish individuals like me, even after we complete our sentences. There are other people like me still stuck in the system and facing the same situation of double justice. We should be able to rejoin our families and communities. The New Way Forward Act takes steps to address this double justice. I strongly support this effort and feel proud to speak in support of it to the public and Congress. This is the kind of change we need. In my case, the punishment itself has become a crime. It's time for a new way forward.
Thank you so much, Nina, and thank you so much, Robert, for sending that message. You know, I think it's been so important to not only push for things like the New Way Forward, which is a bill introduced in Congress that could change a lot of what is wrong with the way that the criminal legal system is used and merged with the deportation system. But it also shows that there's so much more that Secretary Mayorkas could do to make sure that these types of folks like Robert should be released from detention, should be reunited with his family, should be brought back to his community. Next, we're going to hear from an attorney who's been representing many folks who are also locked up, who are also being detained, to tell us a little bit about what type of review process ICE now has, right? The new Department of Homeland Security, the new ICE officials have said that they're now going to be reviewing the cases of folks that are in detention. But unfortunately, this process has been incredibly disappointing. And that is why we still have close to 15,000 people who are locked up in the immigration detention system. So with that, I'll pass it over to you, Lee Vanderlinden, who is a staff attorney with NIJC's LGBT Immigrant Rights Initiative. Lee?
Thank you, and thank you for having me here in the company of amazing advocates. Like said, I am an attorney working in Chicago, and I've been representing different detained folks over the years. I actually just began my career as an attorney under the Trump administration, so that's all I've known. So I wasn't quite sure what to expect from the Biden administration. And you know, there's been less animosity, especially in the language used, but abuses in the detention centers still do persist. There's over 14,000 people that are still detained by ICE. And just one aspect of what detention is like, access to mental health care is almost non-existent. My clients have all experienced various types of traumas. And again, locking them up in immigration detention is an additional trauma. That gets in the way of me helping them fight their immigration cases. And it's just a huge harm to them personally. And while I've been working with folks in detention, just balancing optimism and realism for me has been personally difficult. I had a lot of clients who were excited about the new administration, but then disappointed when we really didn't see the changes that are necessary. So you had mentioned, what is this new case review process? What is it like? I am now representing a trafficking survivor. She was put in ICE custody after she finished her criminal sentence, something that you've heard is pretty common. And I submitted a release request to our local ICE office, talking about how she had survived trafficking, she shouldn't be a priority, but they denied that request within 2 days, pretty quickly. So then there was supposed to be a process where you can escalate those cases to national for ICE to review them, but it was also denied within 2 days. But eventually we got in front of an immigration judge, and the immigration judge granted a $2,000 bond and then she was released. Now she's back home with her family. But the judge set almost the lowest bond that immigration allows. The minimum is $1,500. So by setting such a low bond, it signified that really she had no business being detained, and that ICE's denial of her release was not justified. This case review system, it's flawed because it relies on the same decision makers, the same ICE agents, the same field office directors, and asking them to overturn their own decisions. And even more so, it's almost totally inaccessible to people who don't have lawyers, because people in detention usually don't have access to an email to send a case escalation and wouldn't have access to that types of evidence that would support those types of requests. So it's our hope, it's my hope, that the administration will make true on their promises and really turn their attention to dismantling the detention system that's caused so much harm in our communities.
Thank you so much, Lee. This is really important for us to remember, because I do think that more and more the administration is saying, we'll just send the case to the review process. And if the review process is being reviewed by ICE agents again, we're not very confident that that's going to have different results, right? So it's really important for us to remember that we have to continue to organize around deportation cases. We have to continue to fight to actually lift up the voices in the cases, to ask for the executive actions that we know can come so easily. To close this out, we're going to hear one last testimony. It is also a person who was deported under the Biden administration and has sent us a video from Mexico. So now we're going to be able to hear the voice of Angel Benito Santos, who was again deported under Biden, who had DACA, And because, again, of this merging of the criminal legal system, because of this use of any contact with police as an excuse for deportation, that we're continuing to see folks being ripped away from our communities. So I will pass it over to you, Irma, to now be able to watch Angel's video.
Yeah, my name is Angel Benito, and I'm 31 years old, and I'm a father of 3 U.S. citizen children. I grew up in a place called Redwood City, California, and I was there until I got deported. So I grew up over there since I was like 13 years old. Primero que nada, que no pierdan las esperanzas, ¿verdad? Porque gracias a organizaciones como ustedes hay esperanzas. Pero lo que a mí me gustaría contarles es un poquito acerca de mi experiencia. Yo tenía el programa de DACA, ¿verdad? Y desafortunadamente por una mala representación legal que tuve en lo que fue en el condado de San Mateo County, yo perdí ese privilegio, ¿verdad? Y después de haber hecho una sentencia corta por un delito no violento, se me fue revocado de mí, entonces perdí ese beneficio. Y pues mi abogado yo puedo decir que me dio una mala representación por el hecho de que él me dijo, ¿sabes qué? Date culpable por este cargo y no te va a afectar en tu caso de inmigración. ¿Entienden? Yo a veces, ahora que estuve en inmigración, yo le decía a muchas personas, porque traían personas que todavía no eran convictas por los cargos, simplemente porque fueron al condado y les habían dado el cargo, mas sin embargo no son culpables del cargo todavía. Les decía, ¿sabes qué? Puedes pelear ese caso y trata de borrarlo y no te declares culpable por más que te diga tu abogado qué es lo que te conviene. Si es un abogado público, tú no tomes ese cargo y si le estás pagando a tu abogado, exígele. Mi abogado me había dicho de que tal vez yo solamente iba a estar ahí por 3 meses, ¿verdad? Por unas leyes que existían ahí. Entonces, para mi mala suerte, yo no sabía que iba a empezar un proceso donde iba a durar 3 años. Después de que fui sentenciado, a mí me trasladaron a una facilidad que se llama Grove, donde lo que fue la falta de comida, el tratamiento de los oficiales, el trato de los oficiales hacia nosotros, lo que fue el sistema médico de ese lugar, la verdad no era bueno para un ser humano. Incluso los mismos oficiales cuando entraban a la facilidad, ellos no usaban la máscara, no mantenían su distancia social. Muchas personas sí se contagiaron y cuando nosotros tratábamos de expresar lo que estaba pasando por medio de las noticias, porque sí lo hacíamos llamadas privadas por videollamadas, para dejarles saber a las noticias y a las personas y a las organizaciones allá afuera de que la condición en la que nos tenían allá adentro no era una condición adecuada. Había momentos en el que no había ni siquiera personas que trabajaran en la cocina y si no trabaja nadie en la cocina, nosotros no comíamos. Y si te enfermabas, lo único que hacían era que te llevaban a un cuarto de isolación y te mantenían ahí por 16 días. Ellos me expusieron también y pues desafortunadamente yo contraje el COVID 3 semanas antes de que me deportaran, ¿verdad? Que yo decía, ¿sabes qué? Tenemos una esperanza cuando Joe Biden entre a la presidencia. Tuve mucha esperanza en él de que me iba a ayudar y que una vez que él entrara a la oficina, a su oficina, él iba a parar todas las deportaciones como él lo prometió. Incluso me puse muy contento cuando él entró a la oficina y dijo, ok, voy a parar las deportaciones por 100 días. Cosa que dije yo, está súper bien. Y le empecé a decir a mucha gente, sabes que no firmes nada, ¿verdad? No firmen nada porque tenemos esperanzas. Yo miré a los oficiales cómo arrastraban personas a veces y los forzaban porque los iban a deportar. Personas que decían, pero yo estoy peleando mi caso. Incluso yo también me trataron de deportar cuando yo todavía tenía mi caso abierto. Yo dije, mi caso va a entrar bajo review. Cosa que no fue así, porque el oficial me dijo, sí, está en review. Y a los 3 días después llegó y me dijo, ¿sabes qué? Ya te vas para el martes. Eso yo le pregunté un viernes y para el día martes yo ya estaba en el avión para ser deportado y pues ahora me encuentro aquí en México y me da tristeza porque yo tuve mucha fe, mi mamá tuvo mucha fe, mis hijos, aunque están chiquitos, ellos tenían la fe de que yo iba a estar con ellos. Yo no estoy de acuerdo con lo que él está diciendo de que ciertos casos, que porque tienes una felonía, sí, muchos tenemos felonías, pero porque no sabemos qué es lo que estamos haciendo, porque las malas representaciones que nos está dando el sistema, por esa razón. Cuando tú piensas que te están deportando de por vida, es muy triste. Es muy triste porque pues tú tienes a tus hijos. Yo tengo 3 hijos varones y pues por mi experiencia propia, pues yo crecí sin mi papá, ¿verdad? Yo sé lo que se siente. Yo no quiero que mis hijos crezcan igual que yo. señor presidente, muchas personas o mucha gente de nosotros, muchos latinos, muchos morenos o personas afroamericanas, ¿verdad? Votaron por usted porque nosotros teníamos esperanza de que usted iba a cambiar el sistema migratorio, el sistema policial. Todos tenemos esa esperanza de que usted pueda hacer las cosas correctas. Incluso hasta el momento, yo todavía tengo un poquito de fe de que usted pueda hacer las cosas correctas. También para el señor Mallorca, por favor, paren esas deportaciones. Usted usted es hijo de inmigrantes. Por favor, le pedimos que cumplan sus promesas, que nos den una segunda oportunidad, porque no es justo de que nuestros hijos tienen que crecer sin sus papás o tienen que crecer sin sus mamás. Y nosotros estamos juntos y unidos para dejarles saber de que usted nos tiene que cumplir lo que usted nos prometió, porque sabemos que usted tiene el poder y la autoridad de poder hacer eso, señor Joe Biden. Por favor, cumple sus promesas, porque mucha gente votó por usted porque tenía mucha fe en usted. No nos deje abajo. Y pues eso es lo que me gustaría que él escuchara y que supiera que nosotros estamos unidos, porque nosotros unidos siempre vamos a luchar. Y pues es lo que a mí me gustaría compartir con ustedes en este video.
Muchísimas gracias, Ángel. Thank you so much, Angel, for sharing that story with us. You know, I think these are the stories that make us so mad, that get us so angry, that make us so frustrated. But I think it's also important to hold on to what Angel was telling us to hold on to, right? That hope, that belief that we can actually make a difference and we can get these politicians, whether it's President Biden or Secretary Mayorkas, to actually fulfill their promises, to stop deportations, to close down detention centers, and to have policies that don't continue to just punish for the sake of punishment, that don't just criminalize and rely on a racist policing system, but that actually, you know, give us a way to actually keep our community safe, to keep our families together, and to be able to fight for a little bit of justice. So thank you everyone so much for being on here with us today. This was, again, a National Truth and Accountability Forum as part of Eyes on ICE. For the entire month, we're going to have many more events organized by many grassroots organizations. And we'll also be having 2 more national forums that will talk about worker retaliation when people are organizing, and also around this racist and unjust system of using contact with the police system as a justification for deportation. So please continue to stay involved, register for the other events, participate, and help us amplify. We had hundreds of people on here today. This event was just being live streamed on Mijente's Facebook account, on the Facebook accounts of many of the partner organizations. So please share it. Make sure that other people know about this. Make sure you sign the petition, you tweet, continue to take action, because there are so many things that this administration can do to stop deportations and close down detention centers. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to all of the panelists for participating. Thank you for your tireless work every day. You know, doing all of this, it can be incredibly exhausting. But at the same time, it's just, at the end of the day, it's community that gets us through. So it's really, you know, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you for participating and continuing to be part of this fight. And we look forward to seeing you for the next Truth and Accountability Forum. Have a good night.